For over 40 years, it was and still is the go-to D-segment sedan for most buyers. It's fairly practical, it's roomy, it's comfortable, and perhaps most importantly, it's reliable. It has stood the test of time and remains relevant as ever despite ever-stiffening competition from SUVs. Hello everybody, it's Greg from WapCar, and this is the story of the Toyota Camry. I'm sure you know what a Camry is, right? You've probably owned one yourself, or at least know someone who has owned one, right? And you see, that's the magic of the Toyota Camry. It's a car designed for, well, almost anyone. Hear me out. The Toyota Camry is like Madonna. Both started in the 80s, and both have managed to reinvent themselves over and over again in order to appeal to almost anyone. Don't believe me? Try this, okay? Picture anyone that will look out of place behind the wheel of a Toyota Camry. Tough, right? From a college kid to a fresh grad taking over their parents' car, or maybe a housewife, or a corporate slave, someone's grandparents, maybe even a skateboarder. I personally know 3 of those characters listed above, and my own household has the Camry XV20, which is the second generation of the wide body series. Yeah, there was a wide body and a narrow body Camry. Confused? Don't be. Let's just go back to 1982 when the Camry was born. You see, back then, the Camry was a compact car, hence the term narrow body, and it was available as a sedan, a liftback, and even a wagon. But then in 1991, in order to appeal to a more global audience, the Camry had to grow in size, giving us the first wide-body Camry, the XV10. And since then, we've had the XV20, the XV30, the XV40, the XV50, and then there's this, the XV70 in facelifted form. The XV70 was launched in Malaysia in 2018, with the facelifted version arriving in early 2022. Now, the biggest change is of course the 2.5-litre 4-cylinder dynamic force engine and the 8-speed auto gearbox. But I'm not going to do a deep dive into the tech specs today, so I'll put up a table and you can pause the video right about now. Got it? Good. Now let's continue our story on why the Camry is such a success. Beginning with the notion that it's an uncle's car. Looking at it, I really can't make that connection anymore. And you see, that's the brilliant thing about the Camry. It's been able to change and adapt to altering tastes. Yeah, okay, the XV10 and 20 may have that timeless design, and the XV40 may have hints of a Lexus. The XV50, well, that one's a bit boxy. And the XV30, well, we don't talk about the XV30. And the facelifted XV70, to me, has the right amount of aggression and class. You see these C-shaped frames up front? They're very small changes, but to me, they make the whole front end just that bit more modern. And then you've got these two-tone 18-inch alloy wheels and the smoked internals for the taillights. They're all very small, but all very effective changes. And like most Camrys before it, I'm sure that this one will continue to look pretty fresh for many more years to come. So as we move to the interior, it's a reminder that I'm getting old. And I'm glad that they've retained the uncle aspect here. And by that, I mean the priority in comfort and how idiot-proof the whole interior is. It's not overwhelming. Remember, the Camry has to appeal to a wide audience base, right? So you've got all the properly modern touches from the 9-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, to the power reclinable rear seats and audio controls, and then there's the Qi wireless charger, the 360-degree cam, and the 9-speaker JBL sound system. They're all here. They're all properly modern touches, but it's not overwhelming, and that's what I really like about the Camry. And on the comfort aspect, there's more than enough room for me, front and rear. And these seats, they have just the right amount of side support, although I have to say they can be a tad firm. Now you see, this is why the Camry is such a universally accepted car. It's comfortable enough for all but the most demanding of occupants. And in terms of kit, it's got just the right amount to keep everyone on board entertained. It never tries to be anything it's not supposed to be. Sportiness is not the priority. You see, personally speaking, I feel that most Malaysians get a bit too hung up with having sporty everything. Why would anyone prioritize big horsepower numbers and razor-sharp handling over ride comfort in an everyday car is beyond me. And sitting inside, it reminds me of my family's XV20, and I mean that in a good way. Conceptually, they're the same car. See, it's all about being a family sedan that's practical, comfortable, reliable, and usable. It's tough to quantify, but the Camry is one of those few cars that has what I like to call a sense of honesty about it. And spin-offs of the Camry, like the Lexus ES, retains that same sense of honesty as well. And I would know, because there's also an ES in the household. And yeah, by this point, people would laugh and they would say it's just an overpriced Camry. To which I would ask, yeah, okay, so it is. What's the problem with having a well-appointed, luxurious sedan that puts comfort and reliability over sportiness? Now, with that little rant over, I think it's time we move on to the next chapter of this story, the drive. And in the facelifted XV70, I can safely say that the uncle aspect is gone. Okay, it's not going to rocket forward, but it feels very effortless when you lean on the throttle. And that 8-speeder is very nicely calibrated. It's all very Goldilocks. There's just the right amount of power, not more than enough to scare you. The Toyota Camry has always understood the assignment. It's very quiet with barely any hint of road, wind and tyre noise. In the suspension itself, the setup it's quite soft, so potholes, they're really not going to trouble you. And the damping, it's not too bad. It's not overly soft, but at the same time, it's not scary firm as well. But the biggest surprise is how well the Camry handles. Okay, it's not a sports car, so please don't throw it into corners, but if you smoothly carve a winding road with it, you would be pleasantly surprised at how planted, how composed the whole package feels. But where I feel the Camry cannot afford to fall into the Goldilocks zone is safety. I mean, part of staying relevant and competitive means having to really up your game in terms of safety kit these days. In the facelifted Camry, we now have the Toyota Safety Sense 2.5. So the upgraded suite comes with night pedestrian detection for the autonomous emergency braking system, and the adaptive cruise control can now slow down when there's a corner coming up ahead. There's also an auto braking function for the rear cross traffic alert and what Toyota calls intelligent clearance sonar, which basically halts the car if you've placed it into the wrong gear and it detects you're about to ram into a wall. Now by this point, you may be thinking if I'm a crazed Toyota fanboy, but in truth, I'm just here to tell the story on how the Camry has survived through the ages. It's not perfect, far from it. It's not the most exciting or dramatic car around. It's certainly not the fastest and most engaging to drive either. But in some weird, inexplicable way, that is exactly what makes the Camry so good and so relatable. In fact, it doesn't matter if you have an old Camry, or new, or even an ES. Take the same base recipe and prime it up or down to suit different ends of the market. Because fundamentally, it's the same type of honest, unpretentious car. And that, to me, is why the Camry will always stay relevant. With that said, no one knows what the future holds, and with news of the Camry being dropped in Japan after 43 years, I am quite scared that maybe, just maybe, we are flipping the final few pages of the Camry story. I guess only time will tell. And on that note, we have come to the end of today's story. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and do remember to subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you all in the next one. Drive safe and take care.